Reverend Judy, and I'm a Christmaholic. So the topic of my talk today is peace on earth. Cannot wait until after Christmas. And it struck me that it seems like this time of year, we crave peace more than any other time of year. And there's something about Christmas that does that. I mean, think about all of our Christmas traditions. They're all about these idyllic times of the past, right? All of our Christmas carols, Silent Night, Let It Snow, Let It Snow. I mean, it's all about these peaceful images of nature and connection and family. And I think culturally, we crave this peace. And when you think about the natural world, this is the time of dormancy. This is the time in the natural cycle of life when we should have our dormancy before the busyness and growth of the spring begins. So we crave peace. And yet, we have created our culture where this is the time where we do everything we normally do, plus we shop and we wrap and we bake and we party and so our peace gets thrown right out the window with the very traditions that we are hoping to look to bring us that peace. So we turn to Christmas carols to bring us peace at the same time that we're stressed out that we have to make the hot chocolate for the caroling party. So what's that about? So I got to thinking about it, and I mean, I know that I have had the thing of like, oh, well, let's just spend time with family. And I'm like, I can't spend time with family. Don't you know I have presents to wrap? Okay, there might be a little disconnect there between the purpose of the season and the accoutrements of the season. So as I was thinking about this talk, I was trying to figure out a way to really illustrate how we crave this simplicity. And so as many of you know, last week, Steve and I, wasn't here, Eugene spoke. Thank you, sweetheart. I heard he was fabulous. And Steve and I were in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, at the Norman Rockwell Museum and the Main Street Stockbridge Christmas Festival. And so I turned to Steve on Tuesday and I said, who is the poster child, literally the poster child of a simpler time? Norman Rockwell. So Tim, if you would put up the first slide. So Norman Rockwell painted this craving we have for peace, this craving we have for simplicity in our lives. This is called Boy and Girl and Moon. And I love this one because if you look at the dog and the dog's face, clearly the little boy has just discovered girls and doesn't care as much about the dog. The dog's going, wait, what? Beautiful image of childhood. Next slide, please. This is called The Doctor and the Doll. So there's the country doctor. The little girl's clearly concerned that her dolly's sick. And so she's taken him to the doctor, and he's checking out the doll. Can you imagine walking into Kaiser right now with your daughter and her doll? Of course not. This is one of those images that we go, oh, I crave that, I want that, I remember that. Next slide, please. This is one of his later ones. Very simple message. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Isn't that really what this season's about? Next slide, please. This is one of his series of the 4 freedoms. This is called Freedom to Worship, and it says at the top, each to his own conscience. And so you'll see it's got images of people who are clearly of different faith traditions praying together there. And the next slide, please. This is called Reuniting. That's actually, the man on the far right is actually Norman Rockwell. So, the young couple who's clearly moved away from home and they're coming back to visit mom and dad at Christmas. That connection, that family time, that peace. Next slide, please. Again, coming home at Christmas. Now, one of the things I loved about Norman Rockwell is that he was also a commercial. He saw nothing wrong with making a buck or two. So this was an ad that he did for Plymouth, and the name of this painting is, "We're Here, Grandma, We Came in Our Plymouth." but now wait for it. One of the beautiful things about Stockbridge was that they recreate this lifestyle for the weekend that you're there. So one of the things that they have is they have this painting. Next slide, please. With cutouts. Do you see the difference between the previous one and this one? I got to be the toddler, and Steve got slide. So, this is one of Rockwell's paintings that he painted in the decade between 1957 and 1967. It's called Main Street at Christmas. And it is Main Street Stockbridge. And so what they do is they shut down the street. This is what we went there for. And they recreate this painting exactly. So, like the building in the middle that you can see, the Christmas tree on the second floor, if you can see it, it's a little small here, but that was Norman Rockwell's studio, and so he decorated it every year. But I want to draw your attention to the lower right-hand corner. You see that red car with the Christmas tree strapped on top? Next slide, please. There we are with the Christmas tree and the red car, living a simpler, more idyllic time. So that's it for the family vacation slide. but it was a wonderful time, and so Tim, you can go to the next one. Thanks. It was a wonderful time, but it struck me that part of what made it so wonderful is it reinforced that peace. I mean, Steve and I were busy the whole time, and yet we were peaceful every step of the way. There was no hurriedness. There was no stress. There were no presents to wrap. We did go caroling. We did these fun things. We connected with people. And that's what Christmas felt like. When he and you asked Steve, I think he'll say it's the best vacation he's ever had, right, honey? Yeah. But I wouldn't say it, so I'll still say it. But the thing that made it is that we were living that peace on earth, not waiting for the outside world to bring it to us. Now we were in a place where the outside world supported that, for sure. So how do we find peace on earth? I mean, this is the time of year where we talk about it all the time. Peace on earth, goodwill toward man. We want it, but how do we find it when the world doesn't support us? When we can't drop down in Stockbridge, Massachusetts for 4 days and live like Norman Rockwell did? How do we do that? So the first thing we have to do, you guys have heard this before, I'm not going to tell you anything revolutionary, okay? You ready? Slow down. Slow down. How do you slow down when the world is going 1,000,000 miles an hour around you? You just do it. You just do it. Not a very satisfying answer, but you just do it. One of the things we did on our trip is we drove up past Walden Pond. So for those of you who know Henry David Thoreau, he wrote his treatise on Walden Pond. This was his experiment in simplicity. He spent 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days living out in the wilderness. He's about a mile from downtown Concord, by the way. But I guess a mile was farther in 1846 than it is today. But he was living on land owned by his friend Ralph Waldo Emerson, and he completely simplified and wrote about it in On Walden Pond. And it really is a very idyllic place. It's beautiful. And when you read the book, Walden, it's about this slowing down and the insights that we get. He walked with nature. He read. He contemplated. He really took the time to just be. And in this, he gained great insights into who he is and who we are. And this is one of the foundations of transcendentalism. But he had to make the choice to do it. I don't think anybody said, Henry, could you go spend 2 years, 2 months? Well, I don't know. Maybe I never met the man. Maybe somebody did tell him to go away. But he made the choice because he wanted a closer walk with himself and a closer walk with God. And so he went to live in the wilderness. Now, we can't take 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days to go live in the wilderness, nor should we. But we can take 2 minutes to stop and remember the truth in a moment when we feel our temper rising. We can take 2 hours to stop and do something for ourselves, to support and nurture ourselves, to slow ourselves down. Read, contemplate, journal, meditate, pray. We can slow down to that point where we feel the peace within us. Because here's the news flash in all of this. Peace doesn't come from the world. Peace comes from in us. We don't have the world bring us peace. We bring peace to the world. But how do we bring peace to the world if we can't find it in ourselves? We have to try. And so how do we find it in ourselves? We slow down. Now, I understand that I'm telling you all to slow down at the very busiest time of the year. So this is the advanced class. It's easy to slow down, when you got a week's vacation and nothing's going on and nobody needs you for a while. It's much harder to do this time of year with all the demands on you and your time and your attention. But this is when it's most important to do it. Hence the title of my talk. Someone says peace on earth, and you're like, I am too busy for peace on earth right now. You must. You must. The second thing that we have to do is we have to give up control. That's how we find peace. We give up control. It's really funny, I just looked out and I saw all of the spouses staring at one another all of a sudden as I said that. I mean, multiple people just looked over and went. Well, for those of you that looked at your spouse and went like this, I'm talking to you too. If you see it in your spouse, it lives in you. Except for me and Steve, that lives in you. Right, honey?
Yes, dear. Yes, dear.
Yes, dear. What we do, we have to give up control. I think that part of what we are trying to control this season is everyone else's experience. We want them to have a good time. We want them to feel at ease. We want them to have the right present. We want them to have the right card. We want them to know we're thinking about them. We want them to have a good experience. And so we knock ourselves out so that they have a good experience. Can anybody relate to that? Or am I the only one? Okay, good. Thank you. So I am guilty of this. I said at the beginning I'm a Christmaholic. I'm definitely a Christmaholic. We have 2 Christmas trees in our house, a Christmas village. I love Christmas. This vacation in Massachusetts was like my ideal vacation. I mean, all Christmas all the time for 5 days. Does it get any better than this? But I'm also a kind of recovering control freak on this. Because in 1991, my father passed away on the morning of December 25th. And while I've always loved Christmas, that was an interesting experience to have my dad. It wasn't necessarily a surprise. He was in hospice, but he had been expected to live until February or March. So the fact that within the few days before Christmas he made his transition right then on Christmas Day was disconcerting for my family. And so Christmas of 1991 was obviously a difficult day. But Christmas of 1992 was worse. Because my mother and my grandmother, his mother, had never processed their grief. So everything about Christmas caused this reliving of my father's death and transition. And then came Christmas of 1993, and it was unbearable. Especially those two. Loved them dearly, and I get that they were in their own pain. They really made everyone miserable. So by Christmas of 1994, I was pregnant. No, I wasn't pregnant. My daughter was born. She was born in September that year. So I had a little baby. And I'm like, by God, my mother and grandmother are not going to ruin Christmas for my little girl over a man she's never met. I mean, I love my dad and miss him, but, let's get on with our lives here, was my attitude about this. So I swung into controlling everybody else's experience so that my daughter could grow up with a happy Christmas. And so I did the trees, the cookies, the cupcakes, the Christmas parties. Kinsey had more Christmas dresses and patent leather shoes than any little girl should reasonably have, because I was trying to make her happy. I wanted her to have a happy Christmas. And so I let the pendulum swing from allowing my mother and grandmother's experience to control mine to trying to control my daughter's. Neither one is healthy. Neither one is where we need to go with this. But for the next 3 years, Christmas, I'm bad now, but Christmas was crazy then. I just controlled every aspect of Christmas, from the carols on the stereo to the time. I would schedule for her dad and me caroling time where we would sit at the piano and play carols with her. She's 2, but I wanted it to be perfect. It had to be the Norman Rockwell painting. And then, as you guys all know, when she was 3 and a half, I was diagnosed with cancer. And so I've talked about that a lot before. And one of the lessons in cancer is that I had to give up control on everything. And so I came to the realization that I could not control my daughter's experience of anything, of life, but Christmas in particular. That I had to let her have her own experience. So all I can control is me. And since that time, Christmas has been now fun. Okay, I still have a little bit of it, but not as much. But it's been fun. Now we do things that I want to do. Not because I want her or anyone else to have a good time, but because that joy bubbles up in me. Because when I think about it, I go, I can't wait. That's going to be so exciting. control the external and allow it to flow from us. So in order to find that peace that we need this time of year, we have to let go. Just give up control. Because there's a power greater than we are that actually knows what we need in every moment, knows the experience we want to have in every moment, and is conspiring to bring it to us in every moment when we give up control. It's one of those great ironies of life that the more we try to control our experience and anyone else's, the more we push away that divine power that is bringing the very experience we want. So we get to give up control. And then finally, we need to get a new perspective on things. I love this Norman Rockwell quote. The bed and breakfast we stayed at had this beautiful book by Norman Rockwell. You know, there are a million of them. But I opened it up the first time we were there, and the book just fell open to this page, and there's this Rockwell quote in big letters on the side, and I went, I had no idea he was a religious scientist. But here's what it says. Commonplaces and things never become tiresome. It is we who become tired when we cease to be curious and appreciative. We find it's not a new scene that's needed, but a new viewpoint. So Christmas is also one of those times that brings a lot of old perspectives and old baggage and old ideas and old expectations. And that's part of what takes us out of our peace. But if we can get a new viewpoint, if we can see it differently, if we can let go of, like I said, not only the need to control others, but here's the thing. If we can let go of worrying about what others think of us during the season. How many of you have ever spent more on a Christmas present than you could afford because you wanted to impress the person you were giving the Christmas present to? Right. And yet, probably the next Sunday you said to someone at church, well, what other people think of me is none of my business, right? Well, guess what? Again, Christmas is a time where this really comes up because we are interacting more with people and we are solidifying those connections. But we need to get a new perspective on who we are and then let go of worrying about who other people think we are. And that's how we find the peace. Terry Cole Whitaker said, what you think of me is none of my business. It is so true. But we look again to the outside world. Just as we seek our peace by looking at the conditions around us to bring us peace, we seek our own identity by looking to others and what they think of us to bring us that okayness that we seek. And Christmas, I know for myself, is more than ever I do that. I want people to like me. I want them to like what I give them. I want them to like my Christmas party. I want them to, think I have a cute Christmas sweater. I was so offended. I went to an ugly sweater contest the other night, and I didn't wear an ugly sweater. I thought it was a pretty sweater. Someone said, great entry. We have to get over that. Which I did. We have to get over that. We have to get the new perspective on who we are. We're doing great. We are emanations of the divine. We are loved more than we can possibly fathom by that which created us. We are always connected to our good, and that great power is always wanting to bring us our good. We do not need anything outside of ourselves to have that good. We just need to slow down. We just need to let go of control. And we need to get the perspective that we live from that place, not try to get to that place. And when we do that, peace on earth happens in January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, and guess what? Also in December. Even with the wrapping, even with the baking, even with the shopping, the peace comes from with us. So here's your challenge. Guys ready for your homework? We're just under 2 weeks from Christmas. When you're at the mall, or the grocery store, or Home Depot, or wherever, and you need a parking space, and you are 6 miles away from the store, practice peace. When you're 6 miles away from the store and you see a closed parking space and you go to get it and somebody takes it before you. Practice peace. When the line to buy whatever it is you're wanting to buy stretches out the door and you're in a hurry because you have to get home and, cook dinner or bake cookies or wrap presents or go to a meeting or get to a Christmas party or whatever, practice peace. Slow down. Take a deep breath. Let go of the control and get a new perspective on what's happening here. I love the words of Charles Dickens in A Christmas Carol. That Ebenezer Scrooge's lesson was to look at people not just as fellow travelers to the grave, but rather to the people who love and support us, even if we've never met them. So if you can look at everyone you meet during this season from that place of peace within you and see them not just as fellow travelers to the grave, but as the web of life that co-creates this magnificent experience, that's when you can practice peace on earth. So let's give it a try this way. Let's pray. So take a moment to breathe in and feel into that place within you where you feel peace. Feel into that space within where God lives. Whether that is where the in-breath meets the out-breath, whether it's where you feel the beating of your heart, wherever it is in you, just know peace right now. We all have access to it. It's there always. Loving us, supporting us, because that is the presence of the divine. And so as we breathe in to that place of peace, we recognize that there is something greater than we are that breathes us, that lives us, that moves through us. And it is the recognition of that thing within, is the reconnection to that life within that we celebrate during this season of renewal, during this season of peace. And so I know for each of us that this power moves through us, lives through us, moves out into the world, and emanates from us. And so I know for each person here that as we continue in this great holiday season, this joyous festive season, that we allow ourselves to be that sanctuary of peace. We are peace on earth. We allow it to come from us and to radiate out to others rather than expect it to come to us. I know for each person here that this is not hard to do. We have within us everything we need. All the knowledge, all the wisdom, all the skills. So we go out into our world this week and we practice. We practice being that pebble in the pond of consciousness. We practice being peace on earth. And as we practice it, we find that the outer world moves to manifest itself, to reflect our own consciousness, and therefore we experience more and more of that which we seek. And so I call this week for each one of us a blessing. I call it peaceful, I call it joyful, I call it inspired. I know that we are truly blessed in every moment. And so recognizing this and anchoring into it deep in my being, I give grateful thanks. I give grateful thanks for the presence that lives in each person here, each person in our community, each person indeed on this planet. I give thanks for that presence because it is by connecting with that unique presence that we do create peace on earth. And I give thanks for the natural law that works on my words, making them so for each one of us before I even spoke them. And so as I open my heart to that place where I am appreciative and grateful, and I stand in that truth that all is well and God is good, I can let this go with absolute faith and trust that it is already done and that peace on earth is assured because peace for each one of us is so easy to find. And so with this knowing, I just let it be so. let go. I know all is well, and so